Etitano nalikaleli wa mangwana ni mwalelepo vukenjani keklas whenever Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. The news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Berry and Aina Raiza Kweyo. Here
are the top stories today. Warning over malnourished children in Nigeria. Kenya's fear for relative linked to cult as search for body resumes. 30 years on, Zambia mourns national team killed in plane crash. We also take a look at the sports package with Ari Hohad, as well as we take a trip to Zambia, where Master Mike Sichula has the news on the ground. We'll be right back shortly.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouthwatering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
In our top stories this morning, warning over malnourished children in Nigeria. Unprecedented numbers of malnourished children in need of life-saving treatment are being brought into feeding centers in the city of Maiduguri, northeastern Nigeria, says MSF. Since the start of the year, nearly 1,300 children have been admitted to intensive care, the highest number ever recorded in Borno State for this period. The medical charity says in January, around 75 children were admitted every week with severe malnutrition. By April, that figure had doubled, it said. Some of the children came to detention camps of four former members of armed opposition groups where the living conditions are very harsh. MSF is warning of an impending catastrophe if urgent action is not taken.
Now, weeping relatives on Wednesday awaited the news of loved ones linked to a suspected starvation cult in Kenya as police resumed the search of the victims after unearthing dozens of bodies since last week. The discovery of mass graves in Shakahola Forest near the coastal town of Malindi has shocked Kenyans, with cult leader Paul Mackenzie Ntenge accused of driving his followers to death by preaching that starvation was the only path to God. As the death toll hit 90 on Tuesday, police said investigators were pausing the search for bodies because the morgues were full, with children accounting for more than half of the victims. But on Wednesday morning, search teams resumed operations, according to an AFP journalist at the scene. The last time I saw my mom was in February. She was part of a cult, 16-year-old Issa Ali told AFP. She was so weak the last time I saw her, the soft-spoken teenager added. Hassan Musa, a Kenya Red Cross official, told AFP that 311 people, including 150 minors, had been reported missing to its support staff in Malindi.
In our next story, 30 years on, Zambia mourns a national team killed in plane crash. Zambian football will on Friday commemorate the 30th anniversary of the plane crash that wiped out almost all of the national team, mourning the loss of the golden generation that players says inspired the nation to later victories. 18 footballers were among 30 people killed when a Zambian Air Force plane crashed off the coast of Gabon shortly after a refueling stop on a journey to Dakar, where Zambia were to play a World Cup qualifying match against Senegal. The bulk of the team is experienced internationals, fancied to emerge top of their final round qualifying group and secure the first ever World Cup appearance at the 1994 tournament in the United States. Engine failure after takeoff from Libreville caused the plane to crash into the sea, killing all on board, including coaches, support, staff, and crew.
Now, industry stakeholders are calling on South Africa's government to take emergency steps to mitigate the impact of avian flu pandemic in case it spreads to Brazil, a key supplier of poultry to SA, which could in turn spark a rise in food prices and further strain consumers' pockets. This comes as the Western Cape Veterinary Services warned poultry farmers on Wednesday that avian influenza has been detected on 2 commercial layer farms in the Paardeberg area. Approximately 120,000 birds have died or have been destroyed. The exact strain involved is still unknown and is being investigated. Should South Africa face a serious outbreak of avian flu, it could have significant implications for the country's food security. Meanwhile, Brazil is South Africa's biggest source of imported poultry, accounting for just over half of the imports. Now, Home International imported about 60,000 tons of poultry last year, with South Africa importing about 3 times as much poultry as it exported in terms of nominal value.
Public perception of U.S.-China in Africa equal, according to a barometer report. The U.S. and China are doing their bidding in Africa as the geopolitical race continues. But for most Africans, there is no clear winner between the two, an Afrobarometer research has found. In 16 African nations, China has established 25 economic and trade cooperation zones. According to the China-Africa Economic and Trade Relationship Annual Report of 2021, the zones, which are registered with China's Ministry of Commerce, attracted 623 enterprises with a combined investment of about 7.35 billion by the end of 2020. Since 2021, the U.S. has helped 47 African states secure more than 800 bilateral trade and investment agreements worth more than 18 billion. Additionally, private investment deals from the U.S. into Africa are worth an estimated 8.6 billion since 2021. According to data from the Afrobarometer U.S. and China Perception Research, on average across 28 African countries, half of the respondents rate the economic and political influence of China as positive. A similar proportion of 49% says the same about the U.S.
Now, a new provisional death toll from the Marburg virus epidemic that has been raging for more than 3 months in Equatorial Guinea has risen to 12, according to a new health ministry report confirmed to AFP on Monday. The last death recorded by authorities was due to the epidemic of this virus's cousin of Ebola, and almost as deadly as it was on the 11th of April. As of April 21, there have been 17 cases and 12 deaths since the beginning of the epidemic. Cases of hemorrhagic fever have spread from the eastern province of Kintem, where the first known deaths occurred on the 7th of January, to Bata, the economic capital of the small Central African country. That brings us to the end of our top stories on Africa. Good morning. After the break, we catch up with Mike Sichula in Zambia.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master.
Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Now, President Hakainde Hichilema has ordered the sale of all brand new Land Cruisers which were bought after the UPND formed the government. Very interested in this story. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Africa, good morning.
All right, please get into it.
Yes, the background to this story is that President Hakainde Hichilema, whilst in opposition, he vowed that once his political party formed government, he would not allow the buying of expensive vehicles for government officials because he wants the government to save money in 2 other needy areas. So surprisingly, yesterday, during when he launched the Presidential Delivery Unit, which is a unit aimed at ensuring that government policies are implemented as faster as they could. the president did indicate that there are some government officials who are applying to buy VX vehicles, which he did not, which he said they had agreed during the time they were in opposition not to buy. And also he did say that some of these vehicles have already been bought and they are being used by cabinet ministers, people who are in quasi-government institutions. So he wanted to say, but what has changed? From the time we were in opposition, we had agreed that we need to lead a government that is cost-effective and avoid extravagance. So he has called on the Secretary to Cabinet to ensure that all those vehicles that were bought by cabinet ministers, quasi-government institutions, and other institutions that are under his administrations, that all these vehicles are identified and they are put on sale. They are put on the market, and the money should be used to other channels of national development.
All right, Master Sichula, please tell us about the 10 Zambian nationals who have been evacuated to Ethiopia.
Yes, last week, this week I did report that there are about close to 35 Zambian nationals in Ethiopia. 8 of them were evacuated by the institutions they work for to safer places. So the 10 Zambians who are resident in Sudan have safely arrived in neighboring Ethiopia following the fighting which has engulfed the North African country. The fighting between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary rapid forces has also led to over 400 people dead so far. So according to Minister of Foreign Affairs, Stanley Kakubo, he says the 10 Zambians who have reached Ethiopia include 6 students and a family of 4. Mr. Kakubo says that Zambian embassy is also taking care of other citizens. So it is one of those evacuations that the government of Zambia is doing to ensure that all the Zambians who are docking in Sudan are brought to safer places, that they are not affected by the war.
All right.
By the fighting.
Sorry about that. Now moving over to sports, what's the latest from the Zambia netball team, the national team?
Yes, the Zambia national netball team was invited to participate in the Pacific Austria netball series, which is being held in Australia. So in the last 4 matches, the Zambian team has won 3 times. They first beat Singapore by 61 to 64. Then actually they first beat Kenya 49 to 45. Then they beat Singapore 61 to 44 and lost to Tonga, who are the defending champions of the tournament, by 47 against 59. Then yesterday, they beat one of the strongest African side, Malawi, by 50 to 46 to qualify to the semi-finals of the netball series. So Zambia is likely again to face Malawi in the semi-finals for the finals, which Tonga is likely to reach the finals as they are the defending champions.
All right, all the best to them.
All right, Master Sichula, please tell us about Kenneth Kaunda Day.
Yes, the Kenneth Kaunda Day, former President Edgar Lungu declared April 28th as the national holiday to honor the founding president, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, who died on the 17th of June 2021. So this year, it is the 2nd anniversary of remembering Kaunda. So for those of people who may not know the Kaunda, he died on the 17th July 2021. And also he was admitted to Mainasoko Hospital in Lusaka and was being treated for pneumonia. He was also Zambia's president for 27 years. And after he left power, he became a strong campaigner against HIV/AIDS. And he did a number of things for Zambia and the region in terms of liberation struggles, Namibia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, including Malawi. So he's an icon in terms of African liberation in the Southern African region and beyond. And Kenneth Kaunda was also famous for always having a white handkerchief with him. So today is a national holiday, and a number of activities have been lined up, such as a marathon, and also President Hakainde Hichilema is going to officiate at this event.
Long live the legacy of KK, the unifier. Thank you very much for bringing us the news stories from Zambia at Mike.
Thank you very much. Africa, good morning. Do have a lovely weekend.
We certainly hope to do so. We'll be back with economic news after this break.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with entertainment. Everything was happening during this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country. In economic news this morning, South Africa, corruption cost Eskom $55 million a month. The South African state-owned electricity company Eskom is costing an average of $55 million a month in corruption, with the company burdened with debt and unable to produce enough power for the country's energy crisis, the company's former chief executive said on Wednesday. In a remote interview with the Parliamentary Committee on Public Accounts, Andre de Ruyter confirmed his statement on the level of corruption at Eskom in a document he submitted. This is a conservative estimate based on my assessment of losses incurred by Eskom that have come to my attention, he said in the document. 1 billion rand, the equivalent of 55 million, is being stolen from Eskom every month. For months, South Africa's 60 million people have been without power for up to 12 hours a day. The continent's leading industrial power is unable to draw enough electricity from Eskom's antiquated and poorly maintained power station.
All right, moving over to Zimbabwe, Ben Gilpin is one of hundreds of commercial farmers who has been offered government compensation for being evicted from the land and farms 2 decades ago that they lived on and found the plan has come up short. Expelled from the 1,000-hectare farm during a land reform campaign led by former President Robert Mugabe, Gilpin, who lives in the capital Harare, is one of many mostly white farmers seeking redress from the government after years of court action and delays. Still, some farmers say they will reject the government's $3.5 billion compensation. However, the Zimbabwe government intends to now pay farmers over a decade instead of the 20 years announced 3 years ago, according to the finance minister. That brings us to the end of our economic news stories. After the break, we head over to the sports.
Good evening and welcome to Sunset News.
Dutch Minister's List A in his speech, rate in taxes, and how much.
After the break, we take a look at the sports.
We bring you
Economic indicators, tomorrow's weather and sports. I am Aina Raiza Kweyong.
Good day everyone, time for international sports news, starting off with soccer news, and it's the English Premier League that continued with midweek games. An important game that was played between Manchester City and against Arsenal, and it is the English Premier League that do have a few games left in the season, but it was important because Manchester City now very close to Arsenal and they've played 2 games less. So it was an important game for Manchester City, beating Arsenal by 4-1. That was played at Manchester City, and at the moment Arsenal, after 33 games, they have 75 points. After 31 games, Manchester City have 73 games. So potentially, if Manchester City continues winning, they'll be 4 points ahead of Arsenal. Liverpool also had a game in the midweek. They beat West Ham by 2-1. Then Brentford that beat Chelsea by 2-0. And it is Chelsea that continue to battle in the English Premier League. They're 11th at the moment, and they're outside of the top 8 that qualify for European soccer. And they all are 10 points behind Brighton, that's in 8th position. Also Sunday, it will be Manchester City that continue the campaign. They play against Fulham. That will be at Fulham. And then it is Arsenal that try to get onto winning ways again. They play on Tuesday, and they play against Chelsea. Continuing international sports news with tennis news, the Madrid Open that continues. The best players in the world, men's and women's side, playing at the Madrid Open. It's on the ATP and the WTA. It's called a Thousands tournament. Although the number 1 seed in the world in the men's side, it is Novak Djokovic, not playing because of injury. Results from the men's side, Stan Wawrinka, he beat Maxime Chessy, a tough game for him in 3 sets. It was 6-7, 6-3 and 7-6. Then Hugo Grenier, he beat Diego Schwartzman by 7-5, 6-4. And a good result also for Richard Gasquet of France. He beat Martin Lanescu from Spain, 6-2 and 6-1. And then Dominic Thiem, he beat Kyle Edmonds of the UK by 6-4, 6-1. Dominic Thiem coming back from injury as well. He's been a top 5 player in the world recently. Then on the women's side of the draw, it is a good result for Jacqueline Christian. She beat Sloane Stephens, very experienced Sloane Stephens from the USA, by 5-7, 6-4 and 6-4. Sloane Stephens, one of the top players in the world. Eugenie Bouchard, she's from Canada. She's also through to the next round. Didn't play much tournament tennis. It's Eugenie Bouchard of Canada, but she beat Diana Konstrepa. She is from the Ukraine, and she beat her by 6-7, 6-2 and 7-6. And so Bouchard through to the next round. Continuing international sports news with cricket news, the IPL, the Indian Premier League, that continues. Lots of games to be played. There's 74 games in total will be played in the Indian Premier League this season. The final will be on the 28th of May. The latest game, it was the Kolkata Knight Riders, a good win for them by 21 runs over the Royal Challengers Bangalore. Royal Challengers Bangalore have got a very strong team. Kolkata Knight Riders batting first, 200 runs for the loss of 5 wickets, with Jason Roy, the England international, scoring 56 off just 29 deliveries. The Royal Challengers Bangalore, they've only made 179 for the loss of 8 wickets. They've got big names in their team. Virat Kohli, he scored 54 runs off 37 balls, and then South African Faf du Plessis, he scored 17 off 17 deliveries. The Royal Challengers Bangalore, they're 5th on the log now at the moment. The Kolkata Knight Riders 7th, and still leading on the first position is last year's winners, the Gujarat Titans. They at the moment are still number 1. Closing off today's international sports news with golf news. The next game, or the next tournament on the men's PGA is the Mexican Open. Important tournament for those that have not qualified for the PGA, the US PGA, one of the 4 majors. That will be in 3 weeks' time in America, of course. And it is a few South Africans that also play in the Mexican Open, hoping to qualify for the PGA. They Gary Hugo of Stellenbosch in South Africa, in Cape Town. Then also Eric van Rooyen and Dylan Fratelli, to mention a few. The final round of the Mexican Open will be played on Sunday. That's international sports news for today. Hope you have a great sport day, and we talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching Africa Good Morning. Just an update, Manchester United blew a 2-0 lead yesterday. Let's get into the highlights. All right, so it's been an interesting show today. We've been talking about several stories. We're just going to get straight into the highlights from some of our top stories.
Yes, warning over malnourished children in Nigeria. And Kenya fears for relatives linked to cult as search for bodies resume. 30 years on, Zambia mourns national team killed in a plane. And those have been our stories.
Those have been our stories indeed. Make sure you join Africa Good Morning tomorrow. Sorry, next week. Cheers.